Hello, I'm Sheldon. Welcome back to my review of Sniper Elite 5. The Sniper Elite franchise has always been of interest to me since the original. I played part 2 and 3 years ago, and for probably about 2 weeks ago before the release of 5, so that I could make an apt comparison between the two games. In a nutshell though, and I guess to no one's surprise, it's more Sniper Elite, but with a few tweaks and changes around the edges. The story has never really been a focus in the series, and certainly has never been its strong point. The story this time takes place in France and revolves around a new secret weapon being made by the Nazis called the Kraken, and it's basically your job to destroy it. For me, the bigger issue was the focus on the in-mission cutscenes at certain points, which I don't really think added anything to the experience. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it only really serves to highlight the already weak aspects of the game, like the voice acting, the lip syncing, and the incredibly uninteresting characters. Thankfully though, the story or the characters have never really been the reason why I play a Sniper Elite game. So while these elements weren't particularly great, I did not find that they hindered or detracted too much from the experience, since they could largely be ignored. And to quote Vasquez from Aliens,
I only need to know one thing: where they are.
Which really is the gist of any Sniper Elite game. Shooting, killing, and getting objectives done. Story is really plays second fiddle. The gameplay remains mostly the same as the previous game, a big open map with numerous ways to complete the objective, much like Hitman, I suppose, but far more shallow. For a game called Sniper Elite, I spent 50% of the time, if not more, sneaking around using my pistol or meleeing enemies silently as opposed to actually sniping. But in the game's defense, I suppose Sniper Elite 4 was kind of the same though. The routine for sniping revolves around finding a sniping spot, a generator, or using recurrent level sounds to mask your shots and taking out as many enemies while you can, while you're there. Then move to the next location and do the same thing. And then throw in the sneaking around and melee killing people on the way. Setting traps and attracting enemies is also a viable strategy and can also be quite fun. The X-ray shots are back this time, but I don't think they were as impactful or enjoyable to watch as the previous game. I actually ended up turning them off. They did add the ability to slow down time during these events, but it's a feature that I really use since, as I said now, I ended up turning it off. They removed the trip mines, I'm not sure why, and replaced them with shoebox mines, which are non-lethal. They've added some decoys along with the ability to mod weapons at workbenches scattered throughout each level. These workbenches unlock new mods for the various weapons that you have in the game when you find them for the first time, and this allows you to mod each weapon or switch out your loadout mid-mission. This design choice does, however, lock people out of attachments and weapons behind campaign progress though, so just keep that in mind. There are also a few different ammo types, some of which are also present in Sniper Elite 4, armor piercing, subsonic, suppressed, non-lethal, etc. I used the armor piercing variation since it allowed me to disable and destroy armor when it was necessary. But as with the previous game, I never really found a use for the subsonic or suppressed ammo, at least not in my playthrough. The pistol starts with a silencer, and the submachine gun can be modded with a silencer as well once unlocked. And in fact, you can even attach a silencer to the sniper rifle, but you do lose a lot of range. So I ended up sticking with the initial loadout that the game gave me, since they had the stats that suited my playstyle. There are of course a number of other rifles, submachine guns and pistols to choose from in the game, which can also be modded, and while the developer was boasting about the thousands and thousands of possible combinations as usual with these kinds of cases, it sounds good on paper, but the practical impact of I think these combinations is likely much smaller than they try to advertise. The addition of non-lethal mines and ammo struck me as somewhat strange, and I'm not actually sure why they chose to take this route. It makes sense in a game like Hitman, but not a sniping World War II game, at least in my opinion. Of course it adds some replayability and allows you to challenge yourself with playing through a mission completely non-lethally, but honestly it really just feels out of place in the setting. There's also a helmet mechanic now, so shots will bounce off targets' helmets and knock them off, and then it requires a second shot to kill them. And while this is not really such a big issue, this even happens when you have a high-powered rifle, which is a little bit strange to say the least. Missions, however, do work the same way, but a nice addition is that the intel found in the mission or just exploring the level occasionally uncovers new or optional objectives that can be done instead of the game handing everything to you at the start, which I thought was a nice touch. Skills are back as well, of course, and they've had somewhat of a rework. There are 3 skill trees: combat, equipment, and body. Leveling up your character unlocks skill points that you can assign into one of these trees. Unfortunately, I found the majority of these skills to be entirely useless. Well, at least if you're planning on being stealthy, aside from the ones that allow you to carry more equipment or different ammo types. The rest seem pretty much focused on taking damage and such. For example, throwing back grenades, reducing scope shake when you take damage, or enemies being targeted, tagged while they damage you. There's also focus mode, wall hacks. I mean, read X-ray vision, which I never used once. I play on hard mode, and I honestly don't really need my hand to be held, and I've never liked X-ray vision in video games. I never actually took any damage for the most part, unless I was careless or just laid back and I felt like causing some chaos. I suppose if you are planning on running and gunning, some of these skills may be a little bit more useful, but for the most part, the game is incredibly easy anyway. And unless you are planning on playing on the absolute hardest difficulty, not having these skills really will make very little difference in my opinion. The AI in the game is also really dumb. It's been improved slightly over the previous game, but it's still pretty brain dead. It's entirely possible to sit in tall grass and kill an entire group of enemies without them having any idea where you are. Or alternatively, they'll investigate a pile of dead bodies and then deciding that, actually this is nothing to worry about, everything is absolutely fine. So, and then go back to their usual routines. Of course, alerted enemies will search around for a bit before returning to normal. Of course, at the other end of the spectrum as well, the AI can also magically know where you are in some cases, so it can be a little bit inconsistent. There are also a number of multiplayer modes included this time around: co-op, which allows you to play through the entire campaign with a friend. Survival is back, so that's sort of a wave-based survival with up to 4 players, where you have to defend certain objective against waves of enemies. There's a normal PvP mode and an invasion mode. I suppose the normal PvP needs no explanation. The invasion mode is an interesting addition. It allows other players to invade your game and counter snipe you, much like, I suppose, Dark Souls, or you to invade other players' games and do the same. The levels pretty much play out the same way for the person being invaded, with the addition that the phones in certain locations are now usable by the German sniper to locate the Allied sniper. The downside is, of course, when using the phones, the German sniper's position is revealed as well. It's an interesting idea, and I'm sure some will enjoy it. For me though, when I play a Sniper Elite game, I want to take my time, enjoy the stealth gameplay, plan my way through the level and complete the objectives in my own time, not have it turn into a PvP match. Certainly this will appeal to certain people more than others. I played through the entirety of Sniper Elite 4 co-op. I did not get a chance to play Sniper Elite 5 co-op since I had no intention of playing with randoms, and I don't have any friends who currently play Sniper Elite 5. But I honestly don't see how that would be any different than the previous game, since the core gameplay and mechanics are effectively the same for both games. The inclusion of the PvP mode was a little bit odd to me. I know they included it in the other game as well, but it seems like they added it just to tick a box. I'm not sure why I would choose to play this mode. Perhaps I'm wrong, but if I wanted to play a PvP shooter or a team-based PvP shooter, there are plenty of better options out there than Sniper Elite that are far more fluid in the gameplay and far less clunky than this game is. Sniper Elite 5 is a far less polished experience than Sniper Elite 4. I came across several issues during my time with the game. I got stuck on terrain a few times, which required a reload. There were animation glitches, quite a lot of them actually. My character was clipping through certain things or even completely under certain terrain, so I couldn't see them. AI glitches and camera issues existed throughout my experience. Look, I mean, thankfully none of these were game breaking though. If these occurred very seldom, I would probably let it pass, but they were quite frequent and certainly noticeable. So I assume they'll be fixed eventually, but the fact that some of these even existed at launch in the first place was a bit of a surprise. Or perhaps it was not, judging by the state of the gaming industry these days. Yeah. The performance for the most part was fine, but I did notice some frame drops during kill shots and specific areas on certain levels. Turning the shadows down from ultra to high seemed to fix these for the most part. Now, while the game is graphically better than the previous game, I don't think its visual fidelity is so much better that it warrants frame drops into the 40s on my system at 1080p. And for those of you who don't know, I'm on an i7-12700K with a 2070 Super. So yeah, that really shouldn't be happening. However, outside of these issues that I mentioned now, I didn't have any actual crashes or game-breaking bugs to say. Another issue is the invisible walls throughout every level. It's inconsistent and hard to tell what is or what isn't accessible, or what you can climb over, what you can't climb over. Some walls can be hopped over, some can't. Some pushes can be traveled through and some can't. There's no distinction. And I think that the developers should have, or at least should make it more clear. There were plenty of times I tried to access certain areas only to find that I was magically prevented from doing so. Despite the Sniper Elite series always being somewhat clunky, I have mostly enjoyed them. I do love stealth games a lot, and this does scratch that itch to an extent. It does, however, suffer from some of the same issues that were present in Sniper Elite 3 and 4, dumb AI, clunky controls and a weak story, but the game overall is still enjoyable. I didn't really like the updated X-ray camera system, and the non-lethal options just seemed out of place, as I mentioned earlier. It is an improvement over 4 in some ways, but it's just not a whole lot, and depends on your perspective, I suppose, a step back in others. Look, if you're not a fan of Sniper Elite, you can safely pass on this, or just go get Game Pass and give it a try. If you are someone who does enjoy this series, I would still recommend waiting for a sale, or go on to Game Pass and give it a try in the meantime while you wait for the price to drop. Anyway, that's been a look at Sniper Elite. Hopefully some of you found this helpful. If you do have any questions or comments, you can just leave them in the comment section below. Thanks very much for watching. I've been Charling, and I will see you guys next time.